Um, all right. Hello, hello. Good afternoon. I just want to give it a second to see people show up. Looks like we're on 2 of 3. I also got to check my feed. I should have a little cool intro or something, but um, this is just me trying to get some information out there. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to professionally do anything. I just think LinkedIn is a important platform, and especially for this conversation about psychedelics, because it's not like other social media. It's not like we're connecting on this to just spout opinions. It's professional networking, and I know I'm also broadcasting on Facebook and Twitter, just because I want to get the information out. You know, I think it's very critical that during this time of decriminalization, especially here in the state of Colorado, as many of you know, the Proposition 122. Let me check my sites here. The Natural Medicine Health Act is going to be voted on November 8th, which will decriminalize a number of psychedelics, mescaline, not peyote, DMT, uh, psilocybin mushrooms, and ibogaine, and also create a regulatory framework where people can get treatment and therapy using these medicines. And I think we're going to pass it. But yesterday, because I talk about this a lot, I got to speak at an event on Thursday. I just got invited to speak on a panel at a showing of a movie called Dosed 2, which I'm going to get information about that if you want to come and ask me questions. I spoke recently at the Stoned Ape comedy show. It's actually about this man whose son committed suicide and how he used psychedelics to cope with it. He asked me to come on the panel. And so I'm kind of out there seeing all this different information and people who are in opposition to the decriminalization. Then we got people like Jeff Hunt of the Centennial Institute, which is, comes out of my alma mater. I graduated from Colorado Christian University, which sometimes I'm very ashamed of. But I do know there are good people there that are trying to do academic work. But then you got people like Jeff Hunt and the Centennial Institute that are just some kind of right-wing propagandist, and it's terrible, right? And I found that example. So, like on Twitter, my Twitter is Tree Therapeutic, but the title is The Psychedelic Therapist, just like the podcast I'm developing, and my website, thepsychedelictherapist.org. We are taking clients, and you can get on the website and see what kind of services we offer. And it's about to expand as we're getting other medical professionals that want to work with us and help put together a healing center, hopefully, is the goal. One of the things I'm trying to do is find some investors here. I'm actually looking for property because when we pass the Natural Medicine Health Act, I would like to open a healing center, but I'd like it to be way out in the wilderness. I would like to have a ranch and that people come out there and they get both. They get some wilderness therapy. They get disconnected from the urban toxic environment, from their own environment, and just have it tiered where people can come out and just stay and work and, maybe have some greenhouses and gardens, things where people can physically connect with the ground and do work. And, maybe even have tiered 20, 30, 60 days to help also do not only treatment, but research with psychedelic medicine. So it would be like a healing center slash research facility slash treatment center. But we got to deal with propaganda like I'm about to show you. And that's why when I read this last night, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do a live on LinkedIn and my other social media because I want to show people the type of propaganda, because it was a doctor that was sharing this. And I told that doctor, I said, you may want to read these studies before you go and conclusively decide that self-medicating with dimethyltryptamine is so dangerous. Because as soon as I started reading this study, I was like, this is garbage, okay? I mean, I have a master's level education. So, I mean, we've had to, I had to write very large papers with, peer-reviewed sources. And so, fortunately, one of the things that did for me was allow me to look at this research, and no matter how big words they use or whatever professional jargon they throw in, it's good to learn how to read peer-reviewed work and find out how it got funded and research the people, because you'll find a lot of nasty stuff, guys. And for people just to stand up and go, believe science, and is it peer-reviewed? Because if it's not peer-reviewed, it's not legit. Once you look at this, not only is this peer-reviewed, but and someone may correct me, but I think some plagiarism is going on here, because I found the same study in two separate journals without giving any credit about the former published study, and it's all opinion. It is 100% opinion. There is no actual research done in this peer-reviewed journal. So let's take a look at this, because I don't got a lot of time. This actually is like lunch and lunch and psychedelics, because I got a meeting at 12:30. And it's 12:06, so let's just get right into it. So this was the article. This was the published in, here's your source. The title is A Physician's Attempt to Self-Medicate Bipolar Depression with Dimethyltryptamine, DMT. And then, you got the authors right there. And this was published in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs, September-October 2017, right? And so in the title, the introduction, we'll just kind of run through it really quick. It's talking about, what dimethyltryptamine is and where it comes from. And so the physicians that were talking about this were talking about why it's just so horrible. If you're a physician, don't self-medicate with this medication. But here I'm going to show you a few things. So let's get down to this sentence here right at the bottom of the introduction, where it says, the following report details a case of one psychiatrist's treatment of his own bipolar depression with DMT and with phenelzine, which resulted in mania and psychosis. Right there, my alarms went up, because the title doesn't say anything about this other substance, phenelzine, which you're going to find out later is a my language just flew out of me. The monoamine oxidase inhibitor, basically, which those things are dangerous in and of themselves. I mean, they utilize them when people use ayahuasca, but the title doesn't mention that. The title doesn't mention that there were other drugs involved, but it gets worse. Okay, so let's look at some of this. I'm going to show you how to break this down. So all this stuff about DMT is relatively true. But let's look at the case report. So it says a 40-year-old retired male psychiatrist with bipolar 1 disorder and no past medical history presented to the hospital with altered mental state. Now, mind you, the no past medical history is self-reported and from family. They have no other, verification of past medical history of schizophrenia or anything like that. But on the arrival, the patient was nonverbal, combative, and required 6 security guards to restrain him. Oh, wait a minute. Is this the right one? Yeah, this is the right one. Okay. So he had to get restrained. The guy was going nuts. Then they gave him all these other drugs. Ketamine. They gave him propofol. They gave him, Valium, 5 milligrams, diazepam, 20 milligrams. They gave him fentanyl. I mean, they were drugging this guy up to try to bring him down, because apparently the 6 security guards couldn't stop him. So they started doing all this testing because they were trying to find some kind of biological reason for what was happening. So then we go, psychiatry was consulted after the patient's delirium resolved, and he was medically stabilized as he exhibited symptoms of mania and psychosis. He was pressured in his speech, hyper-religious and delusional. He believed that demons were leaching into his soul and asked the medical staff for an exorcism. It was recommended that the patient be admitted into the behavioral health unit for mood stabilization. Now, that is one thing I talk to people about. When you're using things like ayahuasca, there are reports of entities. You know what I mean? And at first, that's what I was thinking when I was like, duh, if somebody goes into a ayahuasca ceremony and they're unstable or they're unprepared or they don't, watch their diet, or they're not using good people or people that aren't trying to do them harm, in the maestros, if they're down in South America, some of these things can happen. I've seen many reports of people claiming demonic possession with ayahuasca or some kind of demonic oppression, and then you get the scientifically minded people, and they're like, well, that's just their mental illness coming out. And then you get the shamans that actually believe in these spirits that'll say, no, No, that's why we're here, you know. And this is a substance where you have to have a shaman to help guide you through the process, partially so you don't get possessed by these entities that you're going to come encounter with. Not everybody does, but I find it interesting when medical professionals and people who promote psychedelics, and they're like, well, these people, they're kind of primitive in their thinking. They don't think in the same way we do medically in the Western. I'm like, that's really condescending. You're basically saying that these maestros are idiots and that their belief in the spiritual world is false, and that you as a Westerner are going to correct them as you're going down there to participate in ceremonies with them. It's ridiculous. But that was a rabbit trail. So let's keep looking at this study, because this thing makes me mad. It made me mad that people were out there spreading this as science. So we were back. He's the mood stabilization, right? So here it goes. After thorough history was obtained from his family, it was revealed that the patient was self-medicating in order to treat refractory depression with DMT and phenelzine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but you can read it. Phenelzine. Looks like phenelzine. The patient had one prior episode of mania and otherwise remained depressed for the majority of his life. He failed previous trials of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, otherwise known as SSRIs. Serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, mood stabilizers, first and second generation antipsychotics. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, no, I don't want to get sidetracked because I only have till 12:30, but I agree with you. Like, people go and they attack these indigenous healers, and they need to listen to them, honestly. But anyways, let's see here. The patient took up to 1 gram of vaporized DMT daily for the past 6 months. After experiencing some improvement in his depression, the patient added phenelzine 60 milligrams daily to his regimen 3 weeks before hospitalization to achieve greater antidepressant effect. His only other current medication was clonazepam, 4 to 6 milligrams daily as needed for sleep. Now, just the clonazepam itself, if he was taking 4 to 6 milligrams daily and then abruptly stop, could cause some kind of psychotic episode. But they don't talk about that. So here's the next paragraph. The patient obtained phenelzine and DMT through the darknet, a collection of online websites for illegal activity. The family confirmed that the patient exhibited some hypomanic symptoms such as decreased sleep, increased religiosity, erratic spending in the past month. However, he did not become overly manic or psychotic until DMT, phenelzine, and clonazepam were abruptly discontinued 2 to 3 days prior to hospitalization. The patient was flying out of state and did not want to travel with an illicit substance. Okay. So obviously, the first thing I got to look at is what is phenelzine? You know what I mean? And here's another reason why this is bad science. So they're taking a self-report from this family that he was getting DMT through the darknet. Now, mind you, here's the title of this, peer-reviewed report, is that he was self-medicating with dimethyltryptamine. Like, that's an absolute. That's the title of this report. But nobody had any of this DMT. Nobody had a sample to test and actually see if it was uncontaminated, to see if it was even really DMT. So they're making a huge assumption here that A, he was actually getting DMT, and the second huge assumption is that he was actually getting phenelzine. So because if he was getting all this from the dark web, who knows what he actually was getting? And who knows even if he was getting these substances, if they were pure, if they were unadulterated. So just right there is something that they don't even address. So then they treat him with clonazepam, blah, blah, blah. And I got to hurry on this, but I want you to go look up this study and read it yourself. And so here's what they say at the end. So they treated him. He got a little better. It said outpatient follow-up was arranged for the patient, but his condition after discharge is unknown. There was zero follow-up. There was zero confirmation about any of this self-reporting. It's just all this is an attack on DMT. And so when you go into the discussion, here's what they say. We considered several possible etiologies in the differential diagnosis, including DMT or phenelzine activation of mania, phenelzine withdrawal, serotonin syndrome, and the natural course a bipolar disorder. And then they say DMT appears to be mostly directly associated with this patient's psychotic presentation. But guess what? They give their reasons why, but all they are is from the patient's self-reporting. That's it. And that's the end of the report. Okay? And there they just bash DMT for the rest of it. So the report makes an erroneous assumption that he was actually on DMT. The report does not even look at the phenelzine. And then they just leap to this huge conclusion. Like here, I could get peer reviewed, and my conclusion would be demons. Yeah, he was possessed by demons, and I don't know where he is now. So we can't test it, and we can't prove it. But that's going to be my conclusion, right? And it is just as scientific for me to say that as what they put here. But here's what's crazy. So I started looking up phenelzine because I want to see, could this cause a psychotic break? And you guys tell me if this isn't shady. I think this is plagiarism because I know this from a graduate degree. If I publish a paper in graduate studies, right, and then go to another class and I take that same work and then I reformat it, but it's relatively the same, and then publish it again without notating that it was previously published, it's called self-plagiarism. So while I was looking up for what this phenelzine is, look what I found. This is going to blow your mind. So I just happened to find this other study, and it says phenelzine withdrawal associated psychosis and mania. Same authors. Let me get the report up. Except, and this is kind of a bad picture of it, but this was published in August of 2017 in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology, and it's called Phenelzine Withdrawal Associated Psychosis and Mania. And they're talking about the use of, MAOIs and how dangerous they can be in discontinuing them. But check this out. Check it out. Case report. The patient was a 40-year-old man with a history of bipolar 1 disorder, and you start going through it, and it is the exact same case study. Same one, except their conclusions at the end of this one, let me see if I can find it. I don't think I have the full report here, but go look this one up. So the conclusion of this other report in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology is that it was phenelzine withdrawal that caused the psychotic break. So here we have one paper in one journal published with the same case study and the same authors demonizing dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and then they turned around and published in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology the exact same case study, changed a few words around, and then blamed the phenelzine for the reason why this guy had a psychotic break. That is peer-reviewed science, guys, okay? So which one is it? Doctors who did this, people who did this study, was it the phenelzine or the DMT, And I find it interesting that what I think they did is they submitted this report to multiple studies and they both got published. And there's just so much publishing that occurs. I'm getting dinged. This is probably for my meeting at lunch. No, I still got 10 minutes. That they didn't think anybody would catch it. But if you go read this phenelzine withdrawal associated psychosis and mania, you'll see exactly what I determined, which was there was no way to prove, there is no even evidence that DMT can cause those kind of psychotic breaks in the way that he was presenting in the hospital. But there is plenty of evidence that discontinuing the MAOI inhibitors abruptly after taking them for long periods of time and not altering your diet can cause those psychotic breaks. And so this is science. And this is why when you see, so I shared this stuff with that doctor and basically said, look, man, you are spreading propaganda. You're spreading bad science. Because here's the other journal report. And they say it's the same authors, but in this one, they're claiming it's the phenelzine. In the other one, they're claiming it's the DMT. They're basing it on self-reporting. They had no controls. They had no substance to test. They had no verification whatsoever. And they had no follow-up with the patient afterwards. Do you see how ridiculous that is? Is that even science? I mean, I could write a report just the same on this same case study and prove why it was demons that really is what caused this guy to have this psychotic break. And hold on a second, I got multiple things going on here, but it was important. It was important for me to want to share this with you guys. So go check out those 2 journal studies: Phenelzine Withdrawal Associated Psychosis and Mania in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology. And the second one is A Physician's Attempt to Self-Medicate Bipolar Depression with Dimethyltryptamine in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs. And compare the reports yourself. It's bad science. We should tell these journals they need to even retract this as a peer-reviewed case study, because it's ridiculous. And there is no justification for the titles of these reports for the dimethyltryptamine anyways, except for people to demonize these substances when we are trying to get these things decriminalized because of their ability to heal. And so, Alan, thanks for listening. I don't know who else came on today, but yeah, check those out. And remember, learn to read these peer-reviewed journals. Don't just post stuff because it's in peer review. Do research. Do research on the researchers. Do research on who they're tied to. Do research on who's funding the studies. But my lunch is over, so I got to go. But you guys have a great day, and thanks for joining me with Lunch and Psychedelics with Seraphim. And go out there and bang on some doors and say, hey, man, what's going on with this study? This is ridiculous. Stop spreading this propaganda. Have a good lunch.